Excellent. Live stream is up. Thank you, Ed.
Fabulous.
Mhm.
Hey, Gale. You're still muted.
There we go. How's that?
That's much better.
Okay.
I mean, I'm 90% deaf in my left ear, so I can lip read a little, but
Wow, 90%. Ouch.
yeah,
Ouch.
only in my left ear. Only in my left ear. My right ear is okay, but
Okay. So when your wife wants you to do something, you always tell her she's got to speak in your left ear. Huh?
oh, it's been more than convenient, especially if I'm sleeping with young children around, and
yeah.
sorry, I was asleep on my right ear. I can't hear anything. I'm gonna pretty much have nuclear Armageddon happen, and I would not hear
You'd
it.
be fine. You'll sleep through it.
So that didn't stop me from being, jabbed in the ribs on several occasions.
Yeah.
No, you got to get up. Okay.
Hey, Ron.
Hey, Gale, how are you?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you, man?
I'm great. Thanks for coming back. This is
My
awesome.
pleasure. My
This is
pleasure.
awesome. We must talk about your book every week.
Oh, really?
Oh my
easily.
gosh.
Easily.
Poor guys.
Easily. No. Hi, Greg.
Hey. I talk about Gale's book every week too, and I'm not joking. I tell people you have to listen to this episode and read this book because this is amazing thinking. And I'm pretty low on the totem pole here, so that's good for you, Gale.
Oh, wow. I got a fan club there. My evangelists.
Absolutely.
We
Absolutely.
absolutely are.
Absolutely.
The apostles of superabundance are going out there preaching the good word. Thank you.
For sure.
We're going to ask you about that because I'm actually upset that it's not more. The ideas are not more prolific out there. They're not that they're out there as much. It makes me crazy, but it makes you even crazier.
Jumping from the academic world to kind of the whole public world, it's a hard jump. I mean,
Yeah.
people that have been able to do that, it's pretty tough. It's pretty tough. So we're doing all these interesting kinds of things, trying to repackage the ideas in different formats. We actually have a cartoon coming out. I don't know if you ever heard of the Tuttle Twins. It's yeah, they're doing an episode on superabundance this fall. So
Great.
we're hoping we can have a
Phenomenal.
younger audience. They get like 5 million views on these cartoon episodes. So
Yes.
we're hoping that'll give us a little opening with that audience. So
Connor Boyack, he's amazing. He's built an empire out of those Tuttle twins. It's just amazing. The guy is.
Yeah.
We've interviewed him. He's incredible.
he is. He's really
That's
fun
awesome.
to talk to. Kind
That's
of
good to
fearless
hear.
too. So it's just like, okay, go Connor, go, man.
Yeah.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Wow.
How's everybody doing today?
Good,
Hey,
Jordan.
Good.
Awesome, glad to hear. I'm gonna go and get some levels for everybody real quick. I'll start with you, Ron. Can I please get a count back from 5 for you?
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Awesome, sounding great. Ed, can I please get a count back from 5 for you?
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Awesome, sounding good. Great. And Gail, how we doing today?
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
All right, awesome, sounding great. We got about a minute and a half here until showtime.
Sounds good.
Excellent.
All right, I'll be in the background. You guys have a great show.
All right.
All
Thanks,
right.
Greg.
Thanks, Greg.
So, Gail, as a reminder, we do 4 segments. I open out, so I'll do the first and third segment. Ron will handle the second and fourth segment. We have a live close, so if you just kind of stay on after we do that close, so we can say a proper goodbye, that would be fantastic.
Okay. Great.
We are live streaming. This is new to us, so even our conversations during the breaks are out on LinkedIn and Facebook and our YouTube channel. We don't have a huge audience as yet, but just to let you know. But the actual podcast that gets dropped they do not hear the stuff in between breaks. So
Okay.
but we're experimenting. We're trying to do some new things.
Yeah. Well, was it live last time?
It was live. Yeah.
It was. Okay.
Yep.
All right. Well, you guys are brave.
It's one of those things. It's sometimes you put a restriction on something, and it really makes it better because nope, I'm sorry, we can't go back and re-record that. It's just
Really.
yeah. So
Having a constraint sometimes helps a lot.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, coming up to showtime. You ready for your countdown?
Sure.
All right, have a great show. Going again. 5, 4, 3, 2.
Welcome to the Soul of Enterprise, Business in the Knowledge Economy, sponsored by Woodard, building your ideal practice with coaching, education, community, and resources. I'm Ed Kless with my friend and co-host Ron Baker, and on today's show, folks, we have Superabundance Revisited, our second interview with Gale Pooley. Ron, how's it going?
Oh, God, I'm so looking forward to this. It's so great to be able to talk to a future Nobel Prize winner.
Absolutely. and we had him on way back when in 2022. I'll get to that in a second. Let me just go a quick reintroduction for our audience. Dr. Gale L. Pooley is an economist, professor, and co-author of Superabundance. He currently teaches U.S. economic history at Utah Tech University and has held academic positions including at Brigham Young University, Hawaii, and the Al Faisal University in Riyadh. Gale is renowned for his work on the concept of abundance and population growth, notably co-authoring the Simon Abundance Index, which we'll talk more about today, which measures resource availability relative to population growth. Welcome back to the Soul of Enterprise, Dr. Gale Pooley.
Great to be here. Thank you for having me again.
Well, as mentioned, we had you first on in December of 2022. And of course, we had your co-author on in September of 2022. That's episodes 409 and 418 if you're playing at home and want to listen to those first. And I just wanted to ask you, 2 years on now, what do you think about how the book has done and how have the concepts gained acceptance in the economics community?
Well, first of all, thank you once again for giving me the opportunity to be on your program. The book itself, it's done very well for an academic book. You know, typically if you can sell more than 100 copies of something in academia, it's like, that's a bestseller. So we're very pleased that the book has sold in the thousands of copies, and it kind of shows up everywhere. We're working on some other concepts to try to make it more understandable. We've produced some videos. I try to do a weekly Substack, to really help people to move from thinking in. We made these three fundamental errors in economics. I call them the original sins of economics. And the first one was that we said that only atoms could be resources. You know, the physical world was our resource. And the second error was that we live in a world of scarcity. And we have to make choices in this world of scarcity. And that's interesting. It's true, but it's really not informing. And then the third error was that we measured things with money. And so our economics, we call it the new economics of really human flourishing. So back to this first error was, atoms by themselves without knowledge have no economic value. It's only when you add knowledge to atoms and their arrangement and what you can do with them that they become valuable economically. And we live in this world of finite resources, but knowledge doesn't appear to have any kind of limit to it. So if knowledge is really our resource, if wealth is really knowledge, and knowledge doesn't have any kind of limit or constraint, then our resources can really be infinite. So that's the first move from thinking in atoms to thinking in knowledge. And then the second one was, we do live in this world of scarcity because we have a fixed number of atoms. But what's really interesting is how we move from scarcity to abundance. How do things that were scarce yesterday or 100 years ago, they're very abundant today? How did that happen? And then the third idea is moving away from measuring in money to measuring in time. And that's based on this idea that we buy things with money, but we really pay for them with our time. So trying to get people to think in this new set of ideas is really what our work's been, for the last 2 years. How can we explain that in a way? How can we articulate it and persuade people to look around? Because what you see is a function of your perspective. And so we believe this new perspective is we think it's much more truthful about reality. This is what the world that we really truly live in. And if you look at the world in that perspective, you kind of shift your your expectation about the future as well. Instead of living in this world of scarcity where we have to fight over atoms, we live in a world of knowledge where now we cooperate in this discovery and sharing of knowledge. So we're we kind of push away at it every day, but we're kind of academics, so we're not used to trying to go out and sell these ideas. But wherever we've gone, we've had a pretty positive audience. Once we've explained to them the framework, they're yeah, that does make sense. I should think in time, and I should think about abundance, and I should think about knowledge. And so got a long way to go, but we're making progress.
Yeah, it absolutely has fundamentally changed the way that I think about the world. I mean, especially in the last 2 years, where inflation has come back into the fore, and all of the reports time after time. And you would put out a Substack and go, "Hold on a minute, I respectfully dissent." Yes, inflation is an issue, but you're not really telling the whole story with regard to this. And we've got a question from one of our listeners that I would like to play from you. And you have dealt with two of these issues, so I'm going to quick switch into this so that you should be able to hear this as well. Make sure I click share sound, which is the always important thing. And here's our question from our listener, Hector Garcia.
Hello, Mr. Pooley. Love your work around time prices. I have a two-part question. One, I'm pretty sure you will talk about this, is the egg prices. I'm paying about 50 cents an egg. I still consider that that's not that expensive compared to the cost of having my own chicken coop, I guess, as an alternative. But I would love to understand where the price of eggs falls into the broader conversation, not just the political, but the economic conversation of today's times. And the second part is the one that I was chatting with Ron and Ed about, which is the real estate prices. There seems to be a bit of a disconnection between time prices and real estate prices. I haven't done my research specifically, but I feel based on what my parents tell me and my grandparents tell me that what they used to pay for housing 30 years ago, 40, 50 years ago, compared to the income today, it's just way off. Like it just seems like in today's average, maybe per square footage pricing is not the same as it was 20, 30 years ago compared to the income. So do you have any research or anything interesting to say about that?
There you go, Gale.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, Hector, for those two really good questions. Let's do the egg question first. Yeah, we have, eggs have just kind of spiked, here recently. It's like, wow, they were $2 and now they're $8. How did that happen? And recall, we go back to prices are a function of both supply and demand. If you increase supply, prices will go down. If you increase demand, prices will go up. And what we've observed with the egg prices is that the long run price of eggs, and this is what Julian Simon talked about, because you'll have these temporary ups and downs in markets, and you watch this line go up and down. The real question is, what is the underlying line doing? In other words, the trend line, what is that doing? And we call that the regression line. And that regression line suggests that we just continue to have more and more abundance with eggs. Right now, we're experiencing this temporary period of really high egg prices. And what we see happen with that egg market is if you dramatically reduce supply, the prices are going to go up. And we have these periodic bird flu episodes. And the Department of Agriculture will require egg ranchers to cull the herd. I mean, you just basically say, you've got to destroy all of these chickens because we're worried about this virus. And that explains much of our recent price increase. And you go back historically, it kind of patterns that flu virus. So if you're really moving supply back and forth, you can expect an egg or anything to go up in price. But Julian also said there's four things that happen when the prices go up. The first thing is that people will use fewer eggs. So you expect, wow, eggs, Last week it was 10 cents an egg, and this week it's 50 cents an egg. Maybe I'm not going to have an egg this morning. I'm not going to have two. Maybe I'll have one. So the quantity demanded will go down, and you want that to happen because you want people to recognize, hey, these things have become much more scarce than they were last week. The second thing that happens is people will go out and try to find more eggs. I'm going to go out and get myself my own chicken. I'm going to go see if I can import some eggs. I'm going to go find more eggs. The third thing that happens is that people will look for substitutes. That there probably are substitutes for eggs, but you think of another product like a Snickers bar. Yeah, if the Snickers bar today was $1.50 and I go in there tomorrow and it's $3, it's like, well, what else would give me the same utility of this egg? And I start looking for substitutes. In many cases, those substitutes are the incentive for an entirely new innovation. When we saw that whale oil that was used to fuel lamps for light, when that whale oil started to become very, very expensive, everybody's thinking, what could we use instead of whale oil that would give us the same light? And this created this whole new demand to discover something else. And that's how crude oil essentially became valuable, because we figured out that we could refine this crude oil and extract kerosene out of there. And suddenly you have this other product that's 1/4 the price. And and then the fourth thing he said is that people will recycle. If something becomes more expensive, people will try to figure out how to recycle it if they can. It's kind of hard to recycle an egg, but you can recycle aluminum cans. What's surprising, if you have an aluminum can today that you're drinking your beverage out of, that aluminum can has been recycled about 7 times already. And aluminum's we figured out how to recycle it. Almost 100% of the aluminum, we can recycle it again. So those 4 things, when they kick in because of a price increase, what Julian said is what you will observe is that you wait a bit and you will notice that the price will actually be cheaper in the future. And it's because you are now focusing on discovering new knowledge. And once you've focused on it and discovered it, then we all benefit from it. So I tell all my friends and on X, I'm saying, anybody want to bet on the egg prices a year from now? I'll bet you $1 or I'll bet you that they're going to be cheaper next year than they are today. Nobody wants to take me up on the bet. They all want to talk about how high the prices are, but it's going to be cheaper. Let this thing play out. Let time kind of play out, and let the market and individuals with these incentives. Prices contain information, and that information creates incentives for people to behave differently. Be patient, and you will see this new discovery of knowledge, and it's going to bring the price down even lower. In our book, we actually analyzed eggs from, I think, 1919 to 2019, and it was like 20 to 1. For the time it took you to earn the money to buy one egg in 1919, you get 20 eggs today. So think again in this long run trend, what has happened? So,
yeah. And before you get to the housing, we do have to take our break. So perhaps you can either deal with that and with Ron or with me in the third segment. But we want to remind our listeners they can get a hold of Ron or me by sending an email to asktsoe@verasage.com. The website is The Soul of Enterprise, where you can see show notes as well as previews to upcoming shows. Go out to our Patreon channel where you can listen to the show commercial free at patreon.com/TSOE. Also, our bonus episodes are out there. And of course, we'd love for you to take a look at Ron and I's new venture, thresholdnow.com. Go to thresholdnow.com/join for more. But right now, a word from our sponsors.
All clear. Just let me know when you're ready for your count-in.
Okay, great. Good stuff, Gale. Thank you.
That was the fastest 15 minutes I think I've ever It felt like about 4 minutes, man. I'm sorry. I just started to...
No.
I looked up and wow.
This is the
very complete
hour
answer.
Of our life.
Yeah.
It's great.
No, we appreciate the long form that we have with you. It's a lot of the podcasts, you only have, especially TV appearances, 6 minutes, right? You got to
Right.
And,
I love that. I love that idea of want to bet. Because
Yeah.
people will say, "Oh yeah, this and this." It's like, well, do you want to bet on it? And suddenly they just go quiet. They don't want
Yeah.
to bet on it. It's like, well, if you're so confident, it seems like $1. Let's just bet $1 and see what happens.
the most common response I get to that, because I've done that as well, is I don't think we should be betting on such important things as inflation and how dare you use.
This is what we tell people, Gale, when they complain about the oil prices going up, and we say, listen, then you'd be an idiot if you didn't sell everything and invest in oil companies. If you
Right.
think that
How
there's
much oil-
a sure
how much-
guarantee.
Yeah. How much Chevron stock do you own? Have you bought?
Yeah, you should own it all.
Do you think they have an unfair advantage and will always be profitable? Do you think that? Yes. Oh.
So do you want me to kind of wait and we'll pick up the housing discussion on your
Yeah, why don't you?
segment, Ed?
I'll pick
Okay.
it up in the third segment, so Ron can take
Okay,
you where
good.
he wants to go, because I know he wants to take you a slightly different place. So
We'll make Hector wait.
yeah,
Okay.
I think we're ready for the count in, Jordan.
I think I have an answer to the house thing, but I am very curious to see what your response
Lots of
is.
answers.
So,
We can all
yeah,
put them all
yeah.
on the table.
All right.
Yeah.
Let's get back on live.
Okay. I'm
Go ahead,
ready.
Jordan.
Okay, Jordan.
Coming back in 5, 4, 3, 2.
Well, welcome back, everybody. We're here for the second time with Gale Pooley, and we first interviewed him in December 2022, episode 418. His Superabundance book that he co-authored with Marion Tupy is also our best book of 2022. Jordan, I was thrilled to see AEI picked it as their best book, and I love the fact that Jordan Peterson's out there plugging it as well. I'm also thrilled that you got almost 400 reviews on Amazon and really good scores, by the way. And I'm just interested, how is it being received among economists? I know there's been some reviews in like Independent Institute, other places, but what kind of feedback are you getting from your colleagues?
It's been kind of interesting because it's we had a bunch of guys look at it before we published it, academic economists, and they made helpful suggestions on what we should do. But I think back to, those three original sins is still kind of economists are fixated on that do we live in this zero-sum world? It's like, no, one, we don't when we trade with each other. The idea of both of us creating value for one another, that's a key insight that sometimes economists, we get frustrated trying to help people understand that, you make a profit when you buy a Snickers bar. Walmart does, but you do as well. And then it's just, we've grown up with CPI. And so this kind of obsession with CPI, watching CPI, and what you realize is CPI tells you how expensive things have become, but it doesn't tell you if they become more or less affordable. And that's really the issue, because things can become more expensive and more affordable at the same time. How is that possible? Because your wage is increasing faster than the rate of price inflation. And that's what we've actually seen. Inflation goes up at 5%. Well, people's wages are going up at 6%. So the time price, which we argue is really the true price, is actually going down. You can buy more today with an hour of your time than you could last year and the year before. And, we're troubled by inflation because we don't like prices doing all of this, but it's, compared to what? Back to this fundamental other economic question. The two questions we always ask is, compared to what? And then what happens? Then what happens? If you're going to do this, then what happens? So the compared to what, the reason time prices are better than money prices is it's a ratio, and it contains more information. It's the price divided by your hourly income, and that ratio really reveals how much your time is buying you today. And when we discover new knowledge, it shows up all over the place. It shows up in effectively I can lower my prices if I discover a new way to manufacture a product. Jordan Peterson made this interesting comment. He said, if you figure out how to do twice as much in an hour, you've doubled your knowledge. You're twice as smart. But it isn't just the company that benefits from that. If I come up with a new way to manufacture something, and now it lets me lower the cost, it lets me pay my employees more, it lets me give higher dividends to my customers. So everybody basically gets to participate and enjoy this new knowledge that's created. So the time price really tries to capture, we think it's a measurement of how much new knowledge that you're adding to an economy. If a pizza costs you 60 minutes, an hour, I'm making pizzas $20. I'm making $20 an hour. The pizza time price is 1 hour or 60 minutes. Well, if next year I can get a pizza for 55 minutes, what does that mean? Well, it means that I get about 10% more pizza for the same time. My pizza abundance is increasing. The pizza guy, he makes more money. I get more pizza for my time. It's like everybody is enjoying this new knowledge that we've discovered. So being able to get people to think in time and think in what's an hour buying you today, irrespective of the prices. Once again, we don't like inflation because it's like this is this monetary thing that's distorting prices, and I go in and I see the prices go up. And typically, what we observe when you have this episode of monetary inflation where you've added to the money supply, 40% increase in the money supply in the last 5 years, you're gonna typically prices will feel that first before wages, but wages will generally always catch up and go faster, especially if you're discovering knowledge. And it seems like we continue to discover knowledge in the middle of wars. If we have COVID, if we have all of these problems, we continue to discover knowledge that allows these time prices of all of these products around us to become more and more abundant. So helping the economics profession to kind of move beyond CPI. We actually have a new measurement that we're trying out that we call the TPI, the time price index, which is you're really just taking the CPI and you're comparing it to wages. And you look at, when someone says, wow, the CPI went up by 13% over the last 5 years. It's like, yeah, that's true. Is that good or bad? Well, it depends, right? That's the right answer in economics all the time. It depends. Compared to what? And the dependency is, well, what's happening to people's hourly wages, not their annual wages, their hourly wages. Because I can have the same, I'm making 50,000 a year, but if I work fewer and fewer hours every year, which is what we are also observing, your effective hourly rate is increasing. So being able to move people, the profession, it's a stubborn group of guys, and then just thinking in time, thinking about knowledge, and then the really interesting thing is how did these things that were very scarce, 100 years ago, now they're just so abundant in terms of the time. So it takes a little bit to move people that have had, if you got a PhD in economics and you've been trained in this one way, it's very hard to move yourself to this new way of thinking.
Gale, it reminds me, I'm a recovering CPA, and I was taught cost accounting, and cost accounting is full of metrics and full of assumptions. But a measurement is something different. If you and I walk outside with a thermometer, we'll probably both get the same reading. But metrics depend upon the assumptions you make. Like right. There's 8 different types of cost accounting that will lead you to 8 different answers on what the cost per unit is.
Oh, yeah.
That's a metric. It's insane. It's there's a law that says a man who wears 2 watches is never sure of the time, as opposed to a guy who wears 1. And the thing that I have found really useful to really get the point across, especially to accountants, because we're kind of measurement freaks, is that time is like the perfect scientific measurement. You guys talk about the metric and the kilogram and the degrees Kelvin are all based in time. Most scientific measurements are, I think, except for 1 or 2. And is that resonating with the economists? I'm just curious because they're measurement people too.
Yeah, they are. That third error that we made where we wanted to measure things in money, that was an error. That was a mistake. Science, as you note, 6 of the 7 units of measurement that we use in science are based on time. It's like economists. Why don't we be like the rest of science and use time in our analysis? So moving to time, it's got these like 7 features that make it better than money. The first is you've got this ratio. It contains more money. Time price contains more information. The second one is you can transcend all of this problem and contention with CPI. How is that calculated? Well, just go right to the time price, and you don't have to worry about CPI. The third one is the scientific method is using time. Let's use time. The other one that I'm thinking about is you can use time prices in any country at any time with any product with any currency. So I can go back to Paris and figure out what the time price of a loaf of bread was, in 1850. And then you note this other thing is we have this perfect equality of time. Each one of us get 24 hours every day. So what do you get to do with your time today compared to yesterday? And what's interesting in that respect is what do you get to do with your time compared to people around you? And people say, well, Elon Musk, he's like this multi-billionaire, but he's got 24 hours a day. What did he get? What's he going to do with his 24 hours? And what do you get to do with your 24 hours? I guarantee he's not going to be able to relax and go to a movie tonight with his family. His time is I think I'm much better off than he is with time. And then the last element is time cannot be bought or sold. You can't buy time. If you could, rich people would never die.
Right.
So it's kind of got this interesting feature about it is, let's measure things in really this thing that every human being understands intuitively. And it's the thing that really ultimately is the most valuable thing you have in your life. At the end of Warren Buffett's life, what would he pay to get another year of life? Would he pay $1 billion, $2 billion, $10 billion to get another year of life? But he can't do that. But you and I, we're really time billionaires in terms of how much time we have left to go in our lives. What do you get to do with that? And it's not a function of what somebody else is doing with your time. You get to choose what you do with that time. So moving from trying to compare income inequality or wealth inequality, look at time inequality, and you'll notice that everybody is much, much more similar, much more similar. And it removes this envy that you are creating by saying, well, I got to compare myself to somebody else's income. It's like, you're going to be miserable if you do that. Because you're going to find somebody richer and smarter and better looking than you are. Compare yourself to who you were yesterday. Is your life improving in terms of what choices you can make with your 24 hours? And then you go back further in time, your parents and your grandparents, like, wow, I'm really rich compared to those people. Who you compare yourself to, what your perspective is, will make you either very, very grateful or very, very envious. So it's pick wisely, choose wisely.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Well, this is great, Gale. Unfortunately, we're up against our next break, and folks, I'd like to remind you, if you want to contact me or Ed, you can do so. Send us an email to asktsoe@verisage.com. You can become a Patreon member, as Ed mentioned, at patreon.com/TSOE. And now a word from our sponsors.
We need to do a 3-hour podcast.
We do.
All clear? Let me know when you're ready for the
We do.
next counter.
Joe Rogan style.
Yeah, Rogan. I'm listening to this one with the Lex Friedman guy, right? And he's interviewing Mark Andreessen. It's like, those guys went like 3.5 hours when I looked at it, and I thought, that's a long time. But I'm listening to it, and I'm going, every minute of this is pretty good.
Yeah.
And they're kind of going off here and there, and it's like, well, that's interesting. And I'm glad you went over there. I didn't expect you to go that way, but
because it's a conversation, it's great.
It is so beautiful that we have this. It's not these little 30-second sound bites that we're trying to scream at each other. I can't watch network TV anymore. It's just like you guys are just, there's nothing of value there with you guys with bumper stickers trying to yell at each other with.
Gale, I'm not going to, I wish I would have had time to say this, but one of the stories you talked about in your Gale wins was the hot dog eating contest, which was great. But you know what amazes me about that, besides the productivity of the hot dog eaters, like you pointed out, is the fact that in today's world we're so damn rich that we can make a living eating hot dogs and running around entering into contests. That just blows my mind.
Yeah.
If you would have told your great grandfather that, well, what are you going to do, son? Well, I'm going to be a professional hot dog eater. He would have thought
I'm going to produce videos of me playing a video game, and people are going to pay me to do that. What? Yeah, crazy. I think we're ready, Jordan, for the count in.
All right, coming back in 5, 4, 3, 2.
And we are back with Dr. Gale Pooley about Superabundance Revisited. So happy to be talking about this topic again. And just picking up on the first segment, Gale, I want you to address the notion of housing, because that is one area that I think that you have even studied that, yeah, it's not necessarily true that you're getting more bang for your buck from housing, but there's another thing that you can think about. So share your answer with us.
Yeah. So lots of factors in housing. Actually, in my prior life, I was a real estate appraiser for 30 years. So, kind of went deep on what real estate really was. First thing you have to recognize is when you buy a house, you're really buying two things. You're buying the lot or the land, and then you're buying the improvements or the house, the physical house. And so you're buying two assets. Think about you're buying two assets. And in most cases, the land is worth from 10 to 20% of the overall price. But in some places, that land is worth 90% of it. It's like somebody shows me a picture of a house in San Francisco, and they say, well, this is a $1.5 million house, and it's 1,200 square feet. And then they show me a house in Oklahoma, same exact house, and it's, 120,000. It's like, well, what explains the difference? It's not the house, it's the land. The land explains the difference in these prices. So that's the first thing you recognize. And why is land so expensive some places and so less so cheap in other places? Why is it so expensive in Silicon Valley but so cheap in Oklahoma? It's because of the ability to actually have more land. It's the ability of this supply to actually grow. And what you have with real estate, which you don't have in many industries, is you have governments that are involved in limiting, artificially, politically limiting the amount of supply of land through zoning regulations. So it's like, California it's less than 5% of the whole state is actually developed. What's the other 95% doing? Well, it's been taken off the market artificially by governments. So you've had this dramatic reduction in the supply that contributes, once again, if you get rid of all your chickens, your eggs prices are going to go up. If you limit how much land you're going to allow to be developed, that land price is going to go up. So that's the first issue. The second issue really has to do with when you buy a house today, that house that you buy is probably a lot different than the house you grew up with when you were a kid. And it's probably a lot different than Grandma and Grandpa's house. The house that I grew up in, it was 1,800 square feet. We had 6 kids. We had one bathroom with one light in the bathroom. And it's like, okay, this worked for us. We grew up and it seemed to work fine. But today, my kids, they all kind of wanted their own bathroom. They wanted their own bedroom. And it's like the average size is 1,000 square feet or more today than it was then. And you have fewer people in the house. The average household size is actually smaller. So if you go to this level of how much are you paying per square foot per person for this house that you buy? And you start making these adjustments, these comparable adjustments to say, well, I'm buying 2,500 square foot. My parents bought 1,500 square foot. Well, that could explain why the price is so much higher. And my family size is actually much smaller. So I got a lot fewer people in my house than my parents did. That would also be an explanation as to why the price is higher. And then you look at the finish of houses today. Granite tabletops, central heating, carpets, two car garages. I don't know. We didn't have a garage when I grew up. And it's like, what's a garage about? Garage is these other things that you add to it. And then just the regulations of what you have to do to build a house today. You know, the book for the building code book is this thick. In 1956, it was like this. So lots more things that have to go in to building a house today. If you look at the price of materials, the time price of materials, it really hasn't changed that much. Really hasn't. 2x4, time price on a 2x4 is about the same. I mean, we'll have periods where it'll go up and down, but generally it's like 2x4, it cost you this much in time today. It was about the same in 1960. Labor actually is not that much more either. The effective labor that you have to spend to build a house. And why is that? Because people today are much more productive with their construction labor. You got pneumatic air-powered nail guns. You've got lots of other engineering that happens. So actually to build a house is not the physical building of the house is not that much more expensive. What's gotten more expensive is the land and the size of the house and the regulations that go with it. The other factor is typically when you buy a house, you buy it with a mortgage. So the interest rate is going to also dramatically affect what the effective time price is. I pay $200,000 for this house, and I'm going to get a 3% mortgage versus $200,000 at a 7% mortgage. That's going to be, you know, some things it's like, I'm not thinking about the price. I'm thinking about the payment. And that payment is driven by the interest rate. So as interest rates go up and down, that really will effectively change the time price, because then it's like, well, how much time do I have to work to service that payment on a per square foot basis? And that's the index we try to use, is how much time does it take you to earn the money to make your monthly payment on a per square foot basis? And when you do that, you'll see that, you know, houses have not gotten that much more expensive, except in these areas where you have really restrictive zoning or the demand is really huge. It's like, you know, the problem with land is we're not kind of making any more of it in San Francisco, but there's a lot of land other places. And, you know, why don't you move to Oklahoma and get a $147,000 house instead of the $1.4 million house in San Francisco? It's probably because your ability to earn money in that market is much different. So are you willing? It's really this ratio of your mortgage payment as a percentage of your income. If I can double my income and my mortgage payment doubles, it's like I'm still pretty good shape here, right?
Right.
So I think there's lots of variables you have to think about. If you want a lower priced house, you got to look. You got to look at different locations. You can't have a really high income in most cases and a really low house price, because you could have a lot of people that are going to want to go to that market where they can earn much higher income, and that's going to push the price up. But it also, once again, if the government in that area is restricting development, and they can restrict development all kinds of ways. And who likes that restriction of development? The existing homeowners.
Of course. So right? I have to ask you, are you aware of the book that Ezra Klein and Derek Thompson just came out with called, ready? Abundance.
Yeah. I just picked up the book. I'm starting to make my way through it. So
okay, because I think they're making the similar argument about that from the supply side, especially with the housing in San Francisco. I haven't read the book yet either, but I've listened to 2 or 3 interviews with them. So and that's one of the things they talk about.
It's interesting, guys. I look at there, and it's really supposed to be this new kind of
I know
playbook for the Democrats, I guess. And it's like, you know, you guys have been kind of doing these restrictions for 50 years, and now suddenly you're going to wake up and say, "Oh, let's have abundance by getting rid of all these restrictions that we imposed." It's like, okay, good.
Yeah. So, you've already outdone them because you have superabundance. They just have abundance. So, I mean,
Yeah.
as far as I'm
Welcome to the
concerned,
club.
yeah, it's a superabundance greater than abundance. So,
Yeah, you're halfway there, guys. At
that's
least
right.
you're on
They're
the right
halfway
side of the
there.
page.
Halfway there. But I've got about 4 minutes left with you, and I wanted to ask you about artificial intelligence and something, because I know that you touch on Jevons in Superabundance, but really he was kind of a believer in the whole scarcity idea, right? Even though he was kind of one of the original marginalists. But talk to me about the Jevons paradox and how it plays into what we saw with artificial intelligence and the incredible explosion from a time price perspective regarding AI.
Yeah, the Jevons paradox basically is wow, if we lower prices, then everybody will we can improve our society if we could just have cheaper gas prices. If gas prices were cheaper, look at all of the abundance that we would have. And it's like the problem is when you lower the price, you increase that demand curve is downward sloping. If you're going to lower the price, you can expect a lot of people to suddenly say, I want to buy that gasoline now. I want to buy that pizza. Everybody loves pizza depending on the price. And, if pizza's $25, it's like, well, I'm not really interested. But if pizza's go on sale at $5, how many pizzas are you going to sell? Are you going to sell the same number of pizzas, or are you going to sell dramatically more pizzas? And that's why the lower the price of something, the greater the quantity demanded, which means people are going to consume even more of that. You're not going to be able to let's impose a price cap on this so people don't have to pay as much. You're creating now another incentive. Then what happens is everybody's going to consume more of it. Now with AI, this whole idea with AI has been, well, if we can get this price down where everybody's going to be able to consume more of it, NVIDIA's doesn't have a future, right? Once we figured this out, and NVIDIA's, you listen to those guys, Jensen Huang, and he says, no, the more AI we have, the more demand we're going to have for AI. It's going to be, everybody's going to want one of these AI, one of our NVIDIA cards, at home. The lower the price we get, the greater the quantity demanded. So, with respect to AI, I think that what you're going to see is this continuation of this development of these products that are very powerful, but the more you make, the more you learn. The more you learn, the lower your costs. The lower your costs, the lower you can price it. And the lower you price it, the more you're going to sell. So you end up with this virtuous spiral of knowledge that continues to get discovered. It makes things more valuable and more abundant at the same time. And that's what you would expect to see happen with NVIDIA. They're going to sell, he thinks he's going to sell 100 times more cards if he can drive that price lower. And ultimately, the company's going to be even more profitable. Henry Ford, between 1912 and 1913, he kind of shuts down all of his plants, reopens it up. He went from being able to produce one Ford per unit of time to 7.7 in 1 year, because he'd kind of configured this way to put these cars together. And it's like, well, did you sell the same number of cars? No. Suddenly we could lower the price, and now the more we sell, the more we learn, the lower the price. You get into this virtuous learning curve, and it goes exponential.
Yeah, it's really going to be interesting to see which one wins out, whether the human genome continues to decrease in the price that it takes, or AI is going to go the other way. That's the ones that have, these astronomical numbers. But so fascinating. We are up against this last break. Want to remind our listeners they can get a hold of Ron or me by sending an email to asktsoe@verisage.com. Website again is The Soul of Enterprise. Show notes as well as previews to upcoming shows. Love for you to go out and take a look at our Patreon channel, and go out to ratethispodcast.com/TSOE, where you can, guess what? Rate this podcast. We'd love for you to rate this podcast. It helps other people find the show. And if you do write a review, we are happy to read it on the air. But right now, a word from our sponsors, including Woodard.
All clear. Just let me know when you're ready for your count-in.
Awesome.
So you guys, have you interviewed George Gilder?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think 4 times.
Yeah. So if you're kind of watching what he's saying recently, he comes out with this monthly little newsletter, and he's
Yeah.
really bullish on NVIDIA and what they're trying to accomplish. And he just said, this, and back to his principle that if wealth is knowledge and wealth is learning, if you can enhance your learning, then you're going to be able to produce knowledge much faster. And I think what he sees the promise of AI is, if I can figure out how to learn something faster, then we're all going to be able to enjoy that increase in wealth that's going to be a consequence of that. So let's get everybody on these learning curves of everybody is doing these models. And I'm kind of the opinion that I don't see that one of these guys is going to be the top one. I don't think that you're going to have that. I prefer to believe that what I think is going to emerge is a market of models where you got all these guys competing with each other, and ultimately this trying to pursue AGI where you get this one model to solve everything. It's like, that's a big that may not be achievable, but you could specialize in these one models. There's a new app that I'm looking at called Manus, MANUS .ai, I think, or .im, I think it is. Anyway, they've moved from the chat level where you're just talking back and forth to an assistant level to this agent level where you just say,
agentic,
yeah, can you go do this task for me? And it goes out and it's grabbing these models.
Yeah.
And I'm going to use this model to do this. I'll go get that model to do that. And it's like, that's really the way markets work, is you go out and find these specialized, division of labor and specialization. That's what that's what you have to think about when you think about how we're going to move forward in AI. Open AI, they're not going to be the one that's going to dominate. It's going to be all of these other little companies. And what we've observed is these guys, some of them just seem like they're really brilliant.
Yeah, for sure. Well, let's do countdown so we can get back in and live.
Okay, great.
Jordan?
All right, coming back in 5, 4, 3, 2.
Well, welcome back, everybody. We're here with Gale Pooley for our second interview. And Gale, the other thing that amazes me about this time price thing, like you were talking about with the housing issue, is one of your articles in Gale Wins, which is your Substack, looked at the Macintosh at 40 years old. And as somebody who's used Mac their whole career, you said a Macintosh cost $24.95 in 1984. Today, you can get one for about $12.99. So you can essentially get 6 for the price of 1. But then, when you think about it, would you want a 1984
Right.
Mac? And then you say that makes today's model infinitely better. And I just want you to explain that, because that's mind-blowing on a whole different level than just the time price.
Yeah. Remember, it's not what you pay for something. In some cases, it's not what you pay for something that counts. It's what someone would have to pay you to not use it.
Right.
Because
Bingo.
it's really your value. And we know that in every transaction, there's one price and two values. There's the value that the buyer has and the value of the seller. And that value, we don't know how much that is above the price. We know it's above the price. Hey, I bought a box of Cheerios. It's $5. How much would you be willing to pay for? Well, maybe $6, maybe $7. But some of these products, it's like, okay, when I survey my students and say, y'all have these smartphone, iPhone products, you paid $500 or $600 for them, you're paying $2 a day. What would I have to pay you to never use it again? And I've yet to find a student that's willing to do it for less than $5 million. It's like, well, you got something that's worth $5 million and you're paying $2 a day for it. You're like an iPhone billionaire, because it cost Apple $100 billion to make that phone, and you get to use it for $2 a day. That seems like a pretty good deal. And then the question is, you got this new iPhone 16, you got the iPhone 1. How much better is the iPhone 1 than the iPhone 16? Some people will say, well, it's got more memory and the screen is better. No. The question is, how many iPhone 1s would I have to give you for you to give me your iPhone 16? And most people say, well, I'd never trade you. I'd never trade you. It's like, well, didn't you think the iPhone 1 was good? Oh, yeah, it was good for its day. But this thing is so much better. So what is really the multiplier, the abundance multiplier with an iPhone 16 over an iPhone 1? They both kind of are priced about the same, but this thing here is it looks like it's infinitely better. I don't know anybody that would trade you for an iPhone 1 that has an iPhone 16. They would want they'd want some cash,
Right,
right?
right.
The difference. So I think once again, if you are thinking in money, and not value, if you're thinking in prices and not value, it can also mislead you about what's happening in a market. How much value is created. William Nordhaus, the Nobel Prize winning economist from Yale, he did some analysis on when new value is created, how much of that new value actually do the entrepreneurs get? And he calculated it was about 2.2%. So it's like, I'm going to make this guy makes this pie. He cuts it into 45 slices. He keeps one of those slices, and all of his customers get the other 44 slices. And you got to tell me, you think that that's not a good deal for us, for us as consumers? They're willing to do that for that kind of a share of the value that gets created. And so I think being able to get people to think about what is this real, what's it really worth? What would I have to pay you to not use this again? I know what you paid the price, but what's the value to you? Think in value, and then you'll come to realize my life is really pretty good.
Yeah,
It's really good.
because that additional value doesn't get picked up in like our GDP, right? We're just
No,
looking at stuff in prices, money prices, not in terms of the value.
right.
The other way, and it's a beautiful illustration, Gail, that you had on your March 7th Substack, Cruise Ship Billionaires, where you talk about Royal Caribbean just launching the icon of the seas.
Yeah.
Two questions for you. One, are you really going to go on that ship for your next vacation? And two, there are free lunches, aren't there?
They're all over the place, and they're free in the sense. Remember, you don't have to be a billion. You don't have to have $1 billion to enjoy $1 billion. And once you kind of realize that, you also tie that into the fact that many products are based on knowledge, and knowledge has this feature that if I have a Snickers bar and I share half of it with you, then I have a half a bar and you have a half a bar. But if I have a piece of knowledge and I share it with you, it's like I still have the knowledge and now you have the knowledge. We've doubled the knowledge. So you look at some of these products, and the reason that we enjoy them is they cost a huge amount of money to develop. $2 billion to build this ship. Why can they do that? Because there's so many of us. There's so many of us. And that allows them to spread that cost over millions, if not billions of consumers, so they can recapture that development cost, that we all get to enjoy this $2 billion ship that I can get on for $100 a day, and I get entertainment and food on top of that. It's like, this is such an incredible deal. But the cruise guys are making money, the workers are making money, the customers are happy. It's like, who's not happy about this? This idea of capitalism, where we transform scarcities into abundances by allowing entrepreneurs this freedom to innovate, and then markets this ability for us to find each other and create value for each other. Markets are these places where we go to find people that can solve our problems better than we can solve them. It's like, why would you not want to encourage that?
Right. It's a marvel. It's you published Superabundance Best of 2024 this year, and that is that a collection of your Substack articles, essentially? Yeah. It's in that book, and folks, it's $3 or something on Kindle. Go get it. I mean, it's amazing. In that book, you have a chapter why Javier Milei won in Argentina, and you point out, and I'm just really curious about this, that Argentina, in terms of time prices, is negative compared to 1980.
Yeah.
I mean, it's actually been more costly for them. Is there any other country that fits that criteria that you've researched?
Not as bad as Argentina that I could get data on.
Okay.
We originally, when we did Superabundance, the book in 2018, we did time price analysis. I think it was 42 different countries. And the country that was the lowest in terms of the increase in abundance was actually Mexico. And it's like maybe that's why Mexico is kind of, people in Mexico are kind of discouraged because they're not experiencing this increase in the rate of abundance. You think about a roller coaster ride. You're China and you started so low that any kind of increase is like, wow, I'm twice as rich as I was last year. I went from $1 a day to $2 a day. I'm twice as rich. If I'm making $100 a day and I go to $101 a day, it's like I don't really notice that. But that absolute versus percentage change really changes people's kind of attitude about their hope in the future. And so Argentines, I just felt so sorry for them because they have not experienced any of this abundance because they have not enjoyed this new knowledge creation that the rest of the world is kind of enjoying them around them, especially. And what explains that? It's not the weather, it's not the language, it's their policies, their government policies that have really kept people from having this positive, optimistic future orientation. When it's like, wow, my money's going to lose its value. The government's got regulations. It's like, I'm just in this kind of funk.
Right.
And it's like, you need leadership that gets you out of that funk.
We've only got 10 seconds, but give me a letter grade. How do you think Malay's doing so far in Argentina? Give me the letter grade.
I think it's got to be at least an A minus.
Right on. Awesome.
I mean, everybody could always be better, but at least an A minus. I mean, the Argentines that I talk to, they're all pretty happy about where their country's moving.
Great. Well, Gale, hang with us as we go through our live close here. But what an honor to have you back. Really, this is the fastest hour ever. Ed, what do we have coming up next week?
Ron, next week we're going to talk about the Friedman Doctrine, the social responsibility of businesses to increase profits, the 1970 essay from Milton Friedman.
Fantastic. I'll see you in 167 hours.
This has been The Soul of Enterprise, Business in the Knowledge Economy, sponsored by Woodard. Building your ideal practice with coaching, education, community, and resources. Join us next week on Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern. That's noon Pacific. In the meantime, visit us on the web at www.thesoulofenterprise.com.
All clear. Great show.
All right. Thanks, Jordan. Take care. We'll talk to you next week.
All right, hope you all have a great rest of your weekend.
All right.
You too. Gale, that was great.
Wish we had another hour or two, man.
Well, hey, we've got a bonus show. We can keep you on if you've got nothing to do.
If you don't have nothing to do, we can stay with us and talk.
Yeah.
As always, we're way over prepared for these questions. So, like,
so many things.
We did a piece for Forbes actually a couple of years ago on this housing deal. And at that time we said that it's 60% cheaper, and it's like, how did you get to that? It's because it's the interest rate. The interest rate was driving the payments, and 3% is a lot different than 13%. And we're back up to 6-7% today, so we're kind of back. We don't have that, but that really drives. When you buy something, is it the price or the payment? And it's like car dealers. You're walking in, the first thing they ask you is not how much you want to buy. It's like, well, how much can you afford on a monthly payment? It's like, well, why don't you tell me the interest rate and the price and all that stuff? It's like, no, you're just thinking about the payment, right? And then, cars are interesting. I mean, Ron, it sounds like you know those Substacks better than I do.
Well, I don't know about that, but I do read them religiously. But and Gale, wouldn't tax subsidies figure in also into that housing answer?
Right.
Because I mean, that inflates the cost too. The fact that cap gains are tax free and we get to mortgage deduction and all that.
You think about 2006, 2007, and what was happening there. It's like you're giving people free money to buy houses. They have nothing to put down. And, the supply is kind of restricted with, you just can't build these things, but people can go buy a house tomorrow if they want to. And then you get this feeding frenzy that happened with this kind of free money. And then all of a sudden the music stops and this thing crashes. It's like, well, we could have told you that was going to happen. If you mess with supply and demand like that, and it's really where we see these prices really not experience abundance. Housing, healthcare, higher education. What can you tell me about those three? They're not really true markets. They have a lot of government involvement either or on the supply side and the demand side. education's a classic, higher education's a classic example. When's the last time you heard of a new college?
Yeah.
They restrict supply and then they subsidize demand. What do you think is going to happen to the price? You got supply going this way, demand going this way. It's all going to a higher price. And so it's really not a market in the sense that it's a buyer and a seller negotiating. It's you got a third party that's out there influencing the buyers and the sellers with either subsidies or regulation.
Sure.
So I'm hopeful going forward. I mean, we got a lot of hope for Dodge. I mean, I think that I can say that for the three of us. But the hope is, can you move to an environment where you're really focused on how do we give people the greatest opportunity to go out and discover new knowledge, to create an experiment, to build. I mean, we're hearing that word again, build. Now let's get back to building, making stuff, software or whatever. But let's go out and try to encourage people to go build stuff. And that's that first step in innovation. You got to build something before you can take it to the market and see if you've actually created value or not. If you're not incentivizing people to go build stuff or giving them the ability to act on their creative impulses, you're not going to create wealth. You're now going to move to a system where wealth then gets divided and redistributed, and you have this envy problem. America's always been this place where I saw what my neighbor had. I want to go get something like that. I can go build something like that. I don't go take his stuff.
Right.
I don't destroy his stuff. I don't really, the coveting idea really is you don't have to covet his stuff. You can go have that.
You can have it.
And so these policies that, the effect is that they've created envy between people because you haven't let people go out and create their own wealth. And how do you do that? It's like, well, here's the formula. One, you got to work and think and repeat and learn and continue this process, but you'll become rich in this country.
Yeah.
You really will.
The envy thing is so interesting because it's not even necessarily that the poor envy the rich. It's that the professional middle manager in all of this is expressing envy on behalf of those they think should be envious of the rich, right? I think it was Nassim Taleb says, the guy who finishes 50th in the Olympics is not jealous of the gold medal winner. He's just happy to be there, right? Right. But it's the second, third place winners that hate the gold medalist.
Yeah.
Right.
Back to that idea is those kinds of events. The other problem is people are kind of accustomed to these winner, zero-sum games. You can only have one guy that gets first place. So it's like, well, there's only one Super Bowl champion this year. Well, markets, an economy is not like that. Everybody can get first place. Everybody can, because everybody can contribute to making this pie larger. This ideology of scarcity, the Thanos ideology that we got this fixed size pie, and if I don't get it, you're going to get it. The slices are getting smaller. It's like, that ideology, that set of ideas where you're thinking that only atoms can be resources, has been responsible for all of this contention between human beings. If we had understood that, look, the way wealth is created is with knowledge. Now you and I, instead of competing with each other over this fixed finite piece of land, we want to cooperate with each other, because if I share some knowledge with you, maybe you reciprocate and share your knowledge with me, and both of us do this for each other.
Right.
Instead of doing this,
Yeah.
we're doing this.
I hope you don't, but I spent time looking at your negative reviews on Amazon just because I found them so hilarious. Because it's like absolutely clear if anyone who's given you a 1-star review is in fact one of them is titled "The authors are insane."
Yeah.
And when you read the review, you're like, you just didn't understand page 2 of this book. That was your problem. You didn't. And then he quotes you guys on page 85. I'm like, what do you mean? No, 57. Like, you didn't understand page 2. Like, you could stop quoting page 57 when you didn't understand page 2.
Yeah, and I think it's, the left, the progressives, whatever you want to call them, they have this, they think that pessimism is sophistication.
Yeah.
And it's like,
nuance.
no, pessimism is you're masquerading laziness and envy and ignorance. It's like, is your immediate response to all of these things just this pessimism? And it's like, what have you actually created in your life? Have you ever found somebody that's really a creator that's pessimistic? No. It's like, if you want to, if you're stuck in this side of the world where you think you're oppressed, you think you're a victim, you think that your problems are due to somebody else, you can stay there if you want to, but you're never going to be able to be on this side where the creative things are happening, where the things that really give you meaning and satisfaction as a human being are going to be. And you gotta be able to dispense with this irrational pessimism. There's no rationality or reason to be so pessimistic today. There's never been a time in the history of this planet where it's easier to create wealth, and it's easier to create life, and go build something. Stop complaining and go build something, and come back when you've built something. These young people that get dressed up in black and they're just dour and depressed. Like, you're 22 and you're like that.
Yeah,
Why?
like Greta Thunberg.
Yeah. What the heck? I mean, Greta, she gets accolades and she gets attention and all this stuff. Think of the people that are following her ideas that have none of that, though. They have no fame or glory or anything. They're just depressed.
Yeah.
In their parents' basement, depressed about the climate or whatever. It's like, this climate thing I think I sense that we're over the hump on the climate thing.
I hope
that
so.
people are coming to realize, look, yeah, the climate changes. Humans probably contributed to it, but we seem to be really clever when it comes to adapting to these problems. We figure out how to avoid these problems, and we're using fossil fuels to do it.
Yeah. And wealth enables that. If we don't have wealth, we're not going to be able to adapt as quickly.
Right. Well, and if the same people who are protesting today regarding the environment had let us pursue nuclear energy back in the 70s and 80s, perhaps we wouldn't need fossil fuels as much, because we would be much further along with regard to nuclear.
Yeah. I think we've kind of turned. I mean, you can say what you want to about Trump, but the vibe, the zeitgeist, it just feels like we turned this corner. It's like, we got people that in charge that are doing things now that are willing to speak up and say things and do things that they're just saying, we're not gonna listen to you people anymore about this stuff, because you haven't created anything of value. What have you read? What have you written? What have you created? Until you've done those things, we can't take you serious. We can't take you serious.
Except, Gale, his stance on tariffs drives me nuts. How do you deal with that as an economist? The tariff thing. I mean, it must just
confounds me crazy.
Yeah, it confounds me that he really thinks these other countries are ripping us off, and I want to yell at him. Governments don't trade, people do.
Yeah, we'll see what happens.
Do you think it's just a ploy to get, to lower tariffs?
Better terms? I'm hoping, because if that was the case, if he said, look, I'll give up all these things, but everybody, let's go to a zero tariff world. You want to sign up on that one? Okay.
Yeah, no, it's great. What I get was like, the response, the irrational response from the other nations who increase their tariffs of like, you're spray painting your house because we're spray painting ours. I mean, this is like insane. Yeah. The rational response to us increasing tariffs would be to lower yours, go to zero, and
right. you look at it, and it's like we've come up with all these innovations, the container cargo ship system, and how to drop the price by 95%. And we have these jet airplanes that can fly they can fly an iPhone from Shanghai to Memphis for 50 cents. It's like how incredible that we've been able to create all this abundance. And then you turn around and say we're gonna make this harder, more expensive to do this. It's like, oh, so I mean,
Yeah.
his other argument that he makes is supply chain. If we're having somebody else make our medicines, make these kind of key things, maybe that's not such a good idea. But whiskey, alcohol, you want to punch the
Wine.
other guy because he's charging you for the whiskey, and you're going to charge him French for the wine, and he's this kind of this deal making guy. You just like wonder where he's going to, or it seems like it changes every day.
Yeah.
Like you're mad one day and then you change your mind. But he's a New York real estate developer, and he's lived in that world of pushing and kind of having to be a bully and negotiating. And it's like, okay, what are you going to ultimately build here for us though?
Yeah.
But I think this time around, I think his team is much better. He's got got Elon there. His team just seems to be a lot more depth, and they seem to be much more entrepreneurial. They understand, look, you've got to create wealth, and this is how you do it. Government's not going to create wealth. They're going to create the conditions where wealth can thrive, can be created, but they're not going to be the wealth creators. So
Right.
I think, Elon, he's doing this slash and burn on the budget, which is great, but I'm hopeful that Trump is going to start to articulate this idea. He's touching on it. I think Vance kind of touches on it a little bit about we got to go back to building stuff. And why can't we do this? Why can't we think about creating these things here? And I mean, the strict economic thing, let's go to the comparative advantage, and let's go to the lowest cost provider, and let's just open the border and trade. Yeah, but I think he has this real heart for people that have suffered as a consequence of that. You go to Ohio and Pennsylvania, it's like, you don't see anything new there. There's nothing kind of built new there. It's like, why is that? It's because there's no wealth that's being created there. So I think Trump has a real heart for those people. And it's like, well, how do I fix that? Well, really the way you fix that is you got to help those people become more productive.
Become builder. Right.
You got to become builders. You got to figure out how to build things better than anybody else can build things. And
How can I serve someone else?
So, let's see how he kind of handles it. I think once again, he's got some good people around him that understand that process. You got to be able to articulate the words and then persuade people to be patient and move forward with it. So I don't know how old you are, but I remember what 1979 was.
Oh yeah.
I was 22 or something, 1979, 23. And what a funk the 70s were.
Totally.
And then along comes Reagan, and George Gilder says, an economy can change as fast as people can change their minds. And so are you able to change people's minds about what they can do in their future and what you should try to do? What kind of risk you want to take? What you should try to do. If you can do that, wow, it could be phenomenal.
Yeah.
It's true. And there is that zeitgeist feeling, you're right, that he's changing that vibe about it. So yeah, I didn't know you were a real estate appraiser, Gale, but one of my favorite examples to illustrate, what Gilder has been writing about forever, this economy and mind, knowledge as well, is look at Disney World. As a real estate guy, location, location, location.
Yeah.
He goes out and buys this swampland for $28 an acre. And now it's worth, I think last time I looked, it's like $7 million an acre within Walt Disney World is the value. If that doesn't, even though I know we're not making more land, but he changed the wealth of that.
Right. So here's the idea to remember. You probably heard me harp on this before, but how many keys are in a piano?
Yes.
And then how many songs are in a piano? Well, it's a trick question because there's really no songs in a piano. The songs are all here, but those keys are worth really nothing without this knowledge that you add to them. It's the arrangement of the atoms that creates the value.
Yes.
If I can take these finite number of atoms and arrange them in a new way, suddenly I've created all this value that wasn't there before. And that value can be destroyed the same way. You take a $2 million, sports car and
Run into the wall.
It's like all the atoms are still there, but they've been rearranged and all the value disappears. So helping people understand that as well is like, you've got to move beyond atoms and think in knowledge. It's the arrangement of these atoms, and some things there's no atoms at all. It's just a pure knowledge play, like music. I mean, we put the music on physical things, but those songs themselves are a pure knowledge play. And then you get the benefits of knowledge economics, not matter or atomic economics.
That brings up something really interesting, because I know in the book you talk about if you take 96 factorial to try to get what the possible number of arrangement of atoms are and the value. But if you're paying attention to what George Gilder's been talking about lately, and that is graphene, which is just the rearrangement of carbon atoms into a particular lattice matrix. Forget about adding anything else to it.
When you talk to him live about graphene, it's like he's on some graphene something, because he sees it as this miracle substance.
Do you share that optimism? Because he said, I think at the recent COSM, that it could be an $11 trillion. He thinks it's bigger than AI.
Yeah.
If I heard him right.
Right.
Do you share that view? Because, it's a cool substance.
I just don't know enough about it. George, he will pick a thing and he'll go so deep on it. It's like he knows everything about it. It's like, I'm just going to trust you, George.
It's like the pit bull on it.
Yeah. So, the guys behind it, Jim Tour is the big guy that's out of Rice University. He's this brilliant guy, and he's got a bunch of brilliant people around him that are, once again, if people are free to innovate, which is really, are you free to go pursue knowledge discovery? Can you discover this new piece of knowledge? Can you create this new piece of knowledge? And then can you share it in a way that actually is valuable? It's really, when people say, what is economics? Lionel Robbins, the old definition, well, it's the study of choice under conditions of scarcity, of alternative uses. Like, yeah, that's true, but what's really interesting, I say economics is the study of how human beings create value for one another by discovering and sharing knowledge. It's like, well, an economy, if you're just the only guy on the island, there's really not an economy. It's when there's two of us now, it's like, well, how can we make each other happy? How can we create value for each other? How can we figure out a trade with each other so we both walk away happier? And then it's, how do we create the stuff that allows us to trade with each other? And all products really are knowledge products. Thomas Sowell says we're really trading knowledge with each other. And so it's like, you want people to get on knowledge curve, so they go out and discover knowledge. You want markets to be free, where everybody can find each other and negotiate prices that make them both happy. And then you've got to be able to create this culture that says, everybody go try this thing. You make a mistake, we'll forgive you. You can go try it again. And we're also going to tolerate this creative destruction process, where you're going to come up with this new product that's going to wipe out the fax machine. And everybody that worked at the fax machine factory, they're going to lose all their jobs. You got to be willing to tolerate that destruction in the economy, because we're going to give you the opportunity to get on a new learning curve, fax machine factory worker, and we're all going to be better off. We're all going to experience this short run pain of innovation, but we all benefit from the long-term abundance of this innovation. So if your culture's open to that, and America's always been kind of on the leading edge of that. Yeah, we're blowing stuff up, but we're making stuff faster than we blow stuff up. Cultures that are not, you go to Europe and it's like, you guys haven't done anything here in 50 years. I don't see anything new there.
Yeah,
it seems to me. What are you guys doing here?
we're a permissionless, what is it called, Ed?
Permissionless and innovation. Yeah.
Innovation, and Europe is the precautionary principle.
Right. They're so worried, and it's a status quo. It's like, well, we have this status here, and we don't want to disturb it. And people that are on the top of that hierarchy, they clearly don't want it disturbed. And, like housing, it's like, look, I got my house, and I kind of tell people, look, you've got your house and it's worth whatever, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000, and look at all the appreciation you've made, but your kids aren't going to be able to live around you. They're not going to be able to buy a house. Mm-hmm. They're going to have to rent forever unless you loan them the money. And you got to take out a home equity line to loan them the money so they can buy a house at $400,000 or $500,000 too. Or wouldn't it be better if we really were able to create this increase in supply where, these prices come back down to where they can now afford, one, they got to get the down payment, and then can you service that? Can you make that monthly payment? Mm-hmm. It's like these I've got 7 kids, and 3 of them have houses, and I got 4 more. It's like, if you got to put 20% down today, you're looking at a house and it's like $400,000. You got to have $80,000. How much have you got saved up? We've got $5,000 saved up. Oh, great. By the time you're 70, you'll have the $80,000 saved up. So I got to help them with the down payment. And then they can usually do the monthly payment, but it's like, now you're spending like $2,000 a month. How much you making a month? Well, I'm making $50,000 a year. It's like, wow, 40% of your income is going to that house payment. And do you really see that $400,000 house going to $800,000? It just feels like, you kind of just tapped out here.
Especially
unless you have this big burst of inflation. And then all the prices are going
or a significant increase to population, and that seems to be going down as well. Right. We're still over replacement in the United States, but only because of immigration, which
exactly. So that's the next kind of book that I'm working on. I got a working title that is what is it? Defusing the depopulation bomb.
Love it. I love it.
Elon, he's been kind of big on this thing that, hey, 2.1 is replacement, and there's just not enough people, and young people today are just got all these reasons why they don't want to have kids, and a lot of them, that's a legitimate reason. I've got a daughter. I'm actually at her house right now. She has a baby. They're getting ready to have their second baby. They found out that it's identical twins.
Wow.
And they thought about getting insurance. Her husband works. He's making, I don't know, $60 a year. He's got insurance. To add her to that insurance policy was going to cost them $700 a month. And it's like, okay, you make too much and you don't make enough because you can't go get the Medicaid thing. But if she has twins and there's a problem and they're in ICU, it's like, they're going to be $1 million babies.
Jeez. Oh, jeez.
And then you go, how are you going to do that? And then it's like, well, then it's like medical bankruptcy. People do that. It's like, well, then you can't buy anything for 7 years. So it's lots of kind of things we're thinking about as a society, a civilization. It's like, how do we create more value, more human beings with more freedom to create things? How do you do that?
Yeah. And
love it.
And Gale, this book Abundance, and I haven't read it yet. I've only listened to these guys like Ed on multiple podcasts. But the supply side progressives, there's a great article on fee on it by Robert Verbruggen, and he basically said, you can sum up their philosophy: we need to deregulate for big government's sake. Because we want more clean energy, we want more infrastructure, especially high-speed rail.
What is it with rail?
And I know, and nuclear power. So this is warmed over New Dealism. I'm really interested in your take on this book.
Well, my initial impression was you guys are in favor of an abundance of more government.
Yes.
You really want more
Bingo.
government.
Yes, they
You
do.
want government to pick these things out. The high-speed rail thing, you think you'd be so embarrassed about what California's done, for what they
It's our,
spent.
it's,
It's
you know,
like, I wouldn't be
Victor,
talking about that, man.
Well,
You
but
know,
that's
I'll be
that's
talking
their
about
argument,
that.
though. Is it if only they were more efficient? If we
you know, Gale, you drive through Central California, you see these trussels, you know, where the high-speed rail was going to go, and Victor David Hansen says this
Yeah.
is California's version of Stonehenge.
Right. What are they doing there? I don't know, California. Are you guys out of California?
I
Ron
am.
is.
Ed's smarter than I am. He's in Texas.
Okay. So I mean, at some point I got to say to California, it's like, you guys have got to get some new leadership.
I know. I
I
know.
mean, how are you're so I watched Gavin Newsom, on his interviews, and I just think you guys have got to be able to look beyond this guy's schmooze.
I
It's
know.
just so schmoozy,
And-
lubricated schmooze. And it's like, this guy has totally taken you, this state, and it was the golden state. Remember the 50s and the 60s?
Oh.
Everybody wanted to go to California. It's, man, we're making money and we're building stuff. And
I was born
the
here.
weather's
And
fantastic.
yeah,
Yeah, it's like no better place on the planet. And today it's like you took all of that and you just destroyed it.
ignored it.
You just
And-
destroyed it.
And what's worse is, I think in 2026, if Kamala Harris runs for governor, she'll win. I don't think we learned anything from the LA fires, or I don't think that'll matter. I think if she runs, she'll win. I really do.
Well.
It's scary, but yeah. Then
is
maybe
scary.
I'll go to Texas.
Yeah, I guess well, Gail. You'll appreciate this. One of the jokes between us is the difference in price between if I wanted to move to California and rent a U-Haul, and
Yeah.
or if Ron wanted to move to Texas, it's like what 4 or 6 times
Oh
more.
yeah. It's like $4,000 for me and like 200. They probably pay Ed to bring the thing back.
That should tell you exactly how desirable those places are, right?
Oh geez.
Well, yeah, the
Well,
U-Haul.
I just Americans, we have accomplished so much in this land of liberty and freedom, and we've had these periods that have been really funky, depressing, but we seem to have always had somebody that came along that pulled us out of it. I mean, we had Reagan come along, and I just tell people, you have no idea what it was like. Reagan, he shows up and he's, sunny and happy and optimistic. And
Morning in America.
yeah, I wish Trump, Trump is a different personality. He's facing the different conditions, but I'm just hoping that he can move us toward this more optimistic future. And
Yeah.
I kind of see it a little bit, but he's so jaded and been so beat up for so long that it's hard for him to not think about it, not talk about how he's been treated. And at some point in time, I'm hoping that he can just move on.
Yeah. I don't know if you had a chance to talk or interact with him, but the person that I am most optimistic about in the administration, and the person that I happen to know personally or have known personally in the past, is Doug Burgum.
Yeah,
Who-
North Dakota guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you've ever listened to him, but he is that way. He is let's build, let's innovate, let's create. I mean, he really is.
He's an entrepreneur.
Yeah, so I
Yeah.
think his team, it's like Trump, you put together a team that is like, you got strong guys in all of these spots.
Yeah.
Strong people in all these spots that are well respected, that really, they're adults, they know what they're talking about, and they're used to executing. They've created wealth. They haven't just been politicians all their life.
Elon catches rocket ships with chopsticks, for God's sake.
The first time I saw the two of them, remember when they two landed?
Yes.
I thought that's a CGI thing. I didn't think that was real. I thought somebody did this cool CGI. And it's like, no, that's actually real. And it's like, you're kidding me.
Unbelievable. I know. And
kidding
they're
me.
torching his dealerships. I can't. And here's the guy building what they want, electric cars, and they're torching them. It's crazy.
And maybe we were fortunate that Trump did lose 2020. because it put these guys into power. And now we really, really see, and I think people have come to, I mean, you look at Kennedy and Tulsi and all these guys that moved out of that party that said, I mean, do you know any Republicans that have become Democrats?
And not a
In the
lot.
last 4 years. It's like,
No.
Yeah.
and I think people, as we observe this, we're going to say, these guys cannot be trusted
Yeah.
with any power at
I
all.
noticed that with economists too, Gail. There seemed to be a lot of, like, Thomas Sowell used to be a communist. Even after he went through Milton Friedman's courses, but you see the left to right movement among economists, but you don't see too many of them going the other way.
There are some. It's the whole Lincoln Project people. You know,
Well, I'm talking
think
about
the problem-
economists specifically.
economists specifically. Yeah.
Yeah, those guys that move the other direction, I think they live in a world where they really don't have to deal with reality. They don't have to deal with, they're working in foundations or government, and they really are not subject to the reality of the market. So you're able to say things and get away with things. It's like, if you said that or did that with a regular job, you wouldn't have a job.
Like Ghostbusters.
Like
The line
Ghostbusters,
from Ghostbusters, you've never worked in the private sector. They actually expect results, unlike here in academia.
Yeah. Yeah. So we'll see. But I don't know. I mean, I think if Harris had won this last election and we had continued to see this thing go the direction, it would have just been, it would be really dark.
I agree. Oh,
Well,
awesome.
Gale, I want to respect your time. Thank you so much for staying an extra half hour with us. I
This
really
is awesome.
appreciate it.
Sounds good, my friends.
And if you do read when you're finished with Abundance, love to have you back on because everybody's talking about this book, and I want to see the Superabundance guys.
How would you play Superabundance against Abundance today? How would you leverage that book today to be able to draw attention?
I think you need an ad campaign. Superabundance greater than abundance.
Yeah,
Real simple.
These guys don't talk. They're just not talking the same game as you are. They're not talking time prices. They're not talking about. So they're saying things like, well, we got to grow the pie and we have to cut down on regulation. We got to build more housing and all. That sounds good, but like you said, it's all for government.
Yeah.
They still think it's government direction that is. They're all for public R&D. It's crazy.
They are for removing regulations, like on the house, especially in California. They are for removing some of those. So that's a
And
positive.
where have you guys been for the last 40 years?
Right? I know.
You guys
I know.
have created this problem, and now you're setting yourself up as we're going to solve this problem. It's like, I don't know if we should trust you guys.
No, the last 40 years they've been
created it.
Yeah, the last 40 years they've been saying supply siders are trickle down.
Yeah. It's so annoying. Hey, Gale, do you know if George is working on a book on graphene? I heard him say that once, but I haven't been able to see anything.
He has, but he's 84 now.
I know.
And so, his mom lived to be like 104, so maybe he's got you're around him and it's like, wow, this guy's got he still runs, tries to run 5 miles a day. Like, man, I wish I could run 5 miles.
I can't drive that much. I mean, he's amazing. And
he's got a bunch of guys. If you've noticed his newsletters, he's got 4 or 5 guys that are kind of co-writing with him. So he's kind of pushed a lot of that stuff. I think they've picked it up. But then when you sit and listen to him, there's nobody that can talk like George Gilder.
No.
When it's original Gilder stuff, and when he speaks, it's like nobody talks like this. So, man, we just hope and pray he's still got something left in the tank to get us to this next thing. So
you see it back there on Ron's shelf, his copy of Wealth and Poverty, and mine is right here. Pull out on a regular basis.
Gilder brothers, man.
Yeah, I read that book. It blew my mind. That first edition of Wealth and Poverty blew my mind because I was taking econ at the time, learning about Keynes and monetary theory, and Gilder just turned everything inside out.
Well, his whole way that he's able to explain entrepreneurial creativity. Yep. These guys are driven, they're driven by creativity. They want to go out and create things and give
Right.
things. And, that capitalism begins with giving.
With
Socialism begins with taking.
which
he just
Ayn Rand
reduces-
tore him apart for. In
Yeah,
one of her
I'm-
last public speeches. I have a copy of that speech. It took me forever to find it, but I forget the venue she was at. But she never mentions George by name, but she talks about the book and just rips him a new one for using the word altruism, which she loathed.
That's the problem I've got with the libertarian guys. Who's the other guy? What's his name? He just did a course I see his face. He actually just did a course for Peterson Academy. And well-known libertarian guy, capitalist guy, capitalism and about selfishness as a virtue and all of this stuff. And it's like, you know what? It's really uninspiring because I don't think you've never really created a business. That's the problem that I had with Anne is she never actually created a business.
Right.
She talked about business people, described their characteristics and all this stuff. It's like, no, Anne, you've never opened a restaurant. Go see what it takes to do
Right.
that. And you'll come to realize, it's about making somebody else happy. It's about creating something and then letting someone else judge it and valuing it and making a profit. And
She
unless
did that
you
with
get-
her fiction. She did that with her fiction, right?
Yeah, kind of her books. She did it with
Yeah.
her books, but it's like a book is not a pizza.
No, no, that's true.
A book is not a product in the sense that, you sold lots of books. People were interested in this book. They valued what you had to say. But what did you do to advance humanity? And she'd say, I don't owe humanity anything.
Anything. Yeah. What has they've ever
wow,
done for
Anne.
me?
That's not really, if everybody thought like that, if everybody really thought like that, would this be a better place or a worse place? And I think Gilder's approach to it is, look, entrepreneurship is this creative activity at the core, and it's a giving activity. It's, altruism or whatever word you want to use for it. It's like, no, this is an effort where human beings are trying to manifest themselves into the world and use their ideas and their time and talents to create something in hopes that other people will value it. They take all this risk and effort to do that. And it's not because of greed. It's because I want to be able to create something that other people value. And I'm willing to put it on the table and let people throw it away. And then I'm going to get up and do it again. It's like, okay, I think that's a much better insight as to what this process is than everybody's greedy.
Gale, could that be a fourth to your original economic sins that economists, for the most part, have ignored the entrepreneur?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I know, like who was it? Israel Kirzner just thinks they're arbitragers. They go from one market, buy low, go to another market and sell high. And Gilder's like, no, they create new markets.
Right. Right. So I try to make the distinction when I talk about entrepreneurs, like what kind of an entrepreneur are you? There's arbitraging entrepreneurs that buy low and sell high. They arbitrage and they make profits out of moving things to higher value places. But you're right. The creative entrepreneur where they create a whole, the 0 to 1 guy,
Right.
Peter Thiel's stuff where you're actually creating something out of nothing that didn't exist before. You're taking this risk. You're devoting all your time and energy to it. And you have no guarantees that this thing's going to do anything. In fact, the odds are against you. So why do you do that? You want to have a culture that encourages people to try, be willing to accept failure, but continue to try. And I think it is much more consistent with what our true nature is as men. Right? As men, what are you going to do? I'm going to go out and try to provide and protect my civilization. And that provision means I got to take risk and I got to think about the future and I got to go try things. And I got the courage to do that. And I've got the resilience to continue to do it when it fails.
Yeah.
And I don't think that Anne really ever got that. I mean, her characters in her books, it's like these guys were they were just kind of like, I don't really want to be around those people.
Yeah, they were her god.
Yeah.
It's so weird.
They did create, like Hank Reardon is
Yeah.
probably the best example. He did create for creation's sake. You know, I think she brings that up. But you're right. For the most part, like it's very dour and a bit depressing. But to your point, and I think Gilder makes this point, right? The ultimate capitalist act is creation of children. Right?
Yeah.
Right. And she never had kids. So
No kids, and none of her characters really had families.
And no, she never writes about children. There's like one 16-year-old in Atlas Shrugged who I think ends up committing suicide. So it's like
No wonder the
problem I had
movie
with
bombed.
Reardon, you mentioned Reardon. He's the architect, right? In Fountainhead.
no, he's the steel magnet. Reardon is the
Yeah, I
Okay,
forget
who
the
was the guy in
architect's name.
Fountainhead that did the architect in Fountainhead?
Yeah, I know who played him in the movie.
Yeah,
Gregory
right?
Peck. Okay.
Gregory Peck, but I
Yeah.
can't remember his
Yeah.
name in the book. Yeah,
I'll look it up while you guys talk.
I
The
do
problem I
think
had
that-
with that guy is he was super creative and he was motivated to do these things, but he went and destroyed that guy's
Right.
building.
but-
It's like you violated this guy's property rights.
You're right.
You know what? You're a big property rights lover, but your guy, because he didn't build it the way you wanted to build, it's like, yeah, people do things like I hire you to get your suggestion, but it's my property.
Right.
I'm going to do it the way I wanted to do it, and you didn't respect that in your book.
Howard Rourke.
Yeah,
So is it
Howard
Rourke. Yeah, Rourke.
It's like, Howard, why did you go do that? Now you're going to jail.
There's that great Soviet Union joke. I forget how it goes. It's something like you have 24 hours to live, and they ask the Irishman, "What do you want to do?" "Oh, I want to walk in the park with my Irish setter and read poetry." And they ask the Frenchman, "Oh, I want to have an affair with my mistress, in Paris." And they ask the Russian. He says, "I want my neighbor's cow to die."
Yeah, I got 24 hours. Yeah.
The whole envy thing,
Right. Right.
Oh, geez.
So, yeah, Georgie is so choice. I mean, I could just sit and listen to him talk. When he does this kind of just open talk, open mic stuff, it's like, wow, these words just kind of flow out. And you think, this guy spent, 80 years thinking and writing and rewriting. So when he talks, he really knows what words to use.
He does.
Man, I wish I
Yeah.
could do that.
He's and did you ever read his book Men in Marriage? He's
Did you
got
ever
that.
see the interview that he had with Dick Cavett? The
Yes,
Dick Cavett show?
yes, with what's his name from Jaws of all
Yeah.
people, Robert Shaw, I think.
Everybody's jumping on old
Everybody's
George, including
just-
the audience, right?
Yes, piling on the two feminists in the audience,
Yeah.
get on him. He got kicked off the Oprah show. They literally ran him off the stage. But he talks in the book Men in Marriage, I think it's in the afterword, about how his uncle or something found a manuscript that his dad, who died in the war, I guess he was a pilot,
Right.
and he wrote that manuscript, which he said, if you change a few words here and there, was basically Wealth and Poverty. And his dad died when he was 2 or something. And it's like, wow, there is some type of link, it's
Right.
just weird, but it's there. That blew my mind. Yeah.
Well, and the genes are still strong because there was an interview about graphene, and I think his daughter, I don't know if you saw this, Gale, but his daughter was the intro, and she has the same gesticulation with the hands.
Oh man.
So have you guys
Genes
ever
are
gone
weird.
to Cosm? The
No,
technology
never
thing?
done Cosm. Wanted to, but just
You got
never
to
worked.
figure out how to get yourself into Cosm.
I
I mean,
know.
they charge a bunch for it, but maybe you get a press pass or something to go do Cosm sometime.
Yeah, that'd be great.
It looks great. And you're at Discovery too, aren't you?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, that's cool. I love what some of those guys, boy, especially, have you ever heard some of those guys on, Peter Robinson brings them on his show, Uncommon Knowledge, every now and
Yeah.
and they sit around, oh my God, that just makes my head hurt, but they're brilliant.
You're right. Yeah, that Discovery's interesting because they started as econ and they kind of went off on this intelligent design thing, which ultimately fits into George's vision about this materialist superstition. He calls it the materialist superstition, and it's really this back to this idea that, and we try to do it with the economics thing, that atoms, there's much more than just atoms. And we say you got atoms, but you got all this other. The knowledge is really what's important, and the biology guys are all kind of thinking, well, it's just all this natural selection and random mutation, and the intelligent design guys are just taking that whole thing apart and just said, there's no evidence to support these
theory.
ideas that you have.
And then people accuse the ID folks of not being scientists, not having falsifiable hypotheses.
Right.
Like, wait a minute, that doesn't that apply to Darwin more than these guys? They're just pointing out that the probability of life happening is so small.
It just illustrates how people can become possessed by an ideology.
Yeah.
They're literally possessed by that ideology, and facts don't matter to ideology.
Yeah.
That's how I feel about Keynes. Look how fast Keynes was able to change a profession. I wish Superabundance could have that type of speed of adoption, diffusion.
The other thing that I think you have to remember about economists is, over half of them go to work for government.
Yeah, that's true.
And so
That's true.
You do anything
Federal
that
Reserve.
kind of challenges the status quo, the status of government, the status of an economist to plan things. Put this guy in charge. He has the knowledge. He can make the better decisions. Anything that kind of threatens that. Hayek in his Nobel Prize talks about this pretense of knowledge, and that was really this hammer on all of these economists out there that thought that they knew better. And
well, now they're going to do with AI, right? That was the missing piece. Now that we have AI and supercomputers, and we're going to be able to do it, able to plan it now.
Yeah, like you guys are foolish. You're really Keynes or Hayek said, we'll never become wise until we admit that what we've been doing is foolish. Right. And people are just really hard to admit that what you've been teaching for 20, 30 years is not true. Mm-hmm. And, just like macroeconomic stuff, the Keynesian, we're going to boost the economy by expanding the money supply, and this is going to be the benefit. And you've been teaching that, and you've been being paid to teach that, and your income is a function of continuing to support that ideology. It really has become an ideology for a lot of them.
Yeah.
You're not going to persuade them. That's why we almost have to, you asked about the question about how other economists done it. It's like, I really didn't have this academic background. I started teaching, I kind of retired from the appraisal thing and started teaching about 10 years ago, but it's really like, I'm lucky because I'm not afraid to go around those guys.
Right.
I'm not afraid to go have podcasts. I'm not afraid to go help somebody do a cartoon. I'm not afraid to go around those guys because I don't need your peer review to take my ideas forward. And
right.
It really takes outsiders to do that. You got to wait for these guys to die or circumvent them.
One fuel at a time.
Yeah, you go right around them. And
we got to get you. And I think both of us have tried through Twitter the last time you were on to get you on Russ Roberts at Econ Talk. Because I don't know if you listen to him, but he has made a major transformation over the course of his career to more and more understanding that the models are models and they're great, but
they're all wrong.
Right.
Some of them are useful, but he's University of Chicago, educated.
Russ is an interesting guy because isn't he like the president of a university in Israel now?
Israel, Shalom College, I think.
Good for Russ, man.
Yeah, and his podcast, I think he's got. What would you say at about maybe 200,000 listeners probably?
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Easily. Yeah. He'd be great venue for you. I just want to hear you guys talk. I mean, I think he'd love your book.
Well, George Mason, all those guys got our book. Cato made
good.
sure everybody on the faculty there got a copy of it.
He was at Mercatus and is now at Shalem College.
Shalem.
That's right. But if you can track him down and send the book, I mean, I'm sure he gets 1,000 books, but I think he would really dig on what you guys are saying. I really do.
I do too.
Yeah, I know my co-author Marion. He's he's kind of a think tank guy. So he's not. And Cato likes to be non-partisan. So they kind of feel like they're kind of above all of the
fray. Yeah,
the fray a little bit.
Yep.
But he does have a little more fire about this abundance book than I do. I think he's read it and he knows those guys, and he knows he knows that this is really just another pamphlet for more government ultimately.
Yeah,
And it's like, let's pretend we're gonna, we got a problem here. Let's pretend that we didn't cause the problem, but we're here to solve the problem. And he really feels like that's the case with those guys. So he's got a little bit of contempt for him, really, kind of.
good. I hope he writes something or puts out a
he's written me a
rebuttal
lot of stuff, but I don't think he's gonna put it out. Because they like to be able, Cato likes to be able to say, hey, we have everybody come to Cato, talk, left, right. We all invite them all to come and talk and listen to them. And
They should do a panel with you guys and those guys. That'd be fun. A book panel. That'd be fun.
The interesting thing is I'm gonna read the thing, but I'm trying to figure out where we actually have crossover, where we really have something.
The
that's
word
in common.
abundance.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. Maybe in the indexes, there's some common words. Yeah.
What do you guys see the problem is, and what do we see the problem is? And I don't think we're on the same page there. And then what do you think the solution is, and what do we think the solution is? You have a different. You think the problem's this, we think it's that. Your solution to that problem's over here. Our solution's over here. So it's like we really don't have. We don't really have enough in common to be able to say, here's how we can compare and contrast, more contrast than compare between our two books.
Yeah.
Of visions and theoretical assumptions about how abundance is created. It's like, what is abundance, you guys? How do you measure that? How do you quantify that? Well, we have a way that we quantify it. It's in time prices. We can measure it, and we can tell you how much it's increasing or decreasing. How do you guys measure it? What is your unit of measurement that you want to use to then begin having a discussion about?
And you have a better theory about why time prices have declined so much and why there's superabundance. They don't have a theory. They've just got, and they don't even have many proposals in the book, apparently, according to this fee article that reviewed it.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but they do give a nod to markets. They go, we're pro-market, but we want government over here doing this, and this, and building high-speed rail.
And I mean, the two issues that Marion really has got off on him with is housing and occupational licensing.
Yes.
Because they said, well, we don't have enough doctors. Well, we don't have enough plumbers. We don't have enough, lots of 25% of the occupations today require a license. In 1952, it was like less than 2%. Could that be one of the reasons we don't have abundance? Is because you've artificially restricted supply with maintaining and creating these government cartels for these occupations. So at least they're recognizing it's like, okay, specific policy. What profession do you want to take away licensing from? Hairdressers, plumbers,
interior decorators,
florists. Are you
feng shui consultants?
Yeah. Are you willing to go to Newsom and say, Newsom, you got 500 or whatever professions that are licensed. Here's the 50 we should have. All the other 450, you need to deregulate all those. Get rid of all of these cartels. Let them go back to having professional associations, but don't give them this power to restrict entry. Mm-hmm. That's what you've done with these cartels.
Yeah.
And Gale, the thing that strikes me more is one of the first books I read from Cato, besides their one on Social Security, was Occupational Licensure. And they made the point in there that Frank Lloyd Wright wouldn't have been qualified to sit for the architectural exam. Edison couldn't sit for the engineering exam. When you have that...
Wilbur and Orville didn't have pilot license.
Yeah. When you have that credentialing, it omits outside thought. It creates groupthink, and you get a more sclerotic profession. There's no new ideas.
So I went through that experience with the appraisal profession. So before, what was it, 87 or 89, it was all, anybody could become an appraiser. You just put your shingle out and you become an appraiser. And how do you get business? Well, you go out and get business. And we had some professional associations that would give designations like the CPA. And, it seemed to serve the public pretty well. But then they had this financial blow up in 87. Remember the savings and loan blew up?
Yep.
And everybody said, well, it's not the bankers. It's not the government. Who is it? Oh, it's the appraisers. Well, let's regulate the appraisers. Let's make appraisers get licenses. And let's make them take these classes and pass these tests. Well, it did two things. It got rid of a bunch of these guys that said, I've been appraising for like 40 years. I'm not going to go, I don't want to get the license. But it made it easier for people to get into that profession because now I could just go get this license. And it was pretty easy. It was easier to get a license than it was a designation. If you think about how hard it is to get a CPA designation, that thing actually stands for something, but it's a private organization that grants the designation. It's not a government license.
Right.
And so we just saw this kind of dilution of a bunch of appraisers that left the market, and then all the prices went up because all these guys left. They didn't want to get their license. And then you get a bunch of guys that show up. It's like, it's easy to get a license now. Now I can become an appraiser. And that's the one profession that I think AI just going to totally wipe those guys out. It's like, if you got a computer program that can beat the world's champion chess player, you got enough computer power to beat an average real estate appraiser. So their game's over. Yeah. In my mind.
Yeah, like the travel agents. Wow.
Yeah. So that's going to be interesting. I mean, it's going to be creative destruction on a massive scale, but creativity is going to be greater than destruction. And get on the curve and prepare to be destroyed and become a creator both.
Yeah. Great stuff. Well, Gale, thank you so much. It's been awesome. Thank you.
We gotta meet up sometime at Cato, or do you guys ever go to Freedom Fest, that thing that Mark Skousen does?
I've never done that either.
We've talked about it a couple times. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's in July.
We should go. That's in July. And every other year he does it in Vegas, and then he does it like this year. I think it's in Palm Springs. I think you'd really enjoy it. I think that you could do some podcasts out of that group. I mean, out of that event, you could do some live stuff that. I've done a couple of interviews there. C-SPAN was there. I did an interview with the C-SPAN guy there. So there's just kind of a nice energy there because you get all these kind of people that are there, and it's like Woodstock for conservative libertarian types. And
we've had Mark Skousen on the show. I've been a big fan of his for a long time, reading his books. He's great.
Well, maybe you ought to try to do something there. This is kind of how he makes money, so he never gives anybody a deal.
Right.
Even if you're a speaker there, he's going to try to charge you.
Really?
But he might, you might be able to. I would go to one of them and think about, how could you leverage your, TSOE, with the Freedom Fest crowd.
Yeah, it's worth looking into.
Maybe sponsors or something. So.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Might be worth it for one of you at least to go to that event. And you what I like about it is you meet all these people.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm meeting these people, and the speakers are always pretty good, pretty interesting. You get some nice, you had Robert Kennedy there one year, you had Trump there one year, and it's like, okay, you got some really interesting people here. But I've
listened to some of the debates he's had.
Yeah.
Some of the headliner debates have been great. So, yeah. No, it's really cool.
It's actually more reasonable than I thought. By the way, it's June 11th through 14th in Palm Springs.
like $400 or something.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
The cost is just getting there and then lodging.
Right.
Where you could spend $2,000 probably to get there and spend the 3 days. But
yeah, I was just in Palm Springs 2 weeks ago. So
okay. Well, you are California, right? No, you're Texas.
No, Ron is. I'm Texas. Yeah, I'm in Dallas.
Where are you, Ron?
I'm in Northern California in the wine country.
So it'd be a long way for you down to Palm Springs. Yeah.
Not too bad. Not too bad at all.
6 hours or something?
Yeah, if I drove. But there's good flights, so I could get there. pretty
And
quick.
that's the high-speed rail thing. It's like, who wants to take
I know.
They
I
only
would
had the
never,
high-speed rail.
even if it was operational, I wouldn't take it.
right? Why would you want to
jeez.
do that? And Amtrak is like they're charging more than the flight. How do you? You're trying to target these people that are afraid of flying or something. I guess. How many of those people are out there?
And you know, did you ever read the essay by Bastiat about the negative railroad that stops in 50 jurisdictions because we're going to have restaurants and hotels and they're going to make money. That's what's happened to this high speed rail. All the politicians are fighting. No, I want it to come through my district.
Right.
It's turned into the negative railroad.
Oh man. Oh man.
Oh,
Just
geez.
trust the market. That's why I don't trust those two abundance author guys. Is they are stuck in the 1800s, thinking that we're shelling out. We're doing the transcontinental railroad again or something. It's like, no, these governments cannot create these kind of things. You got to let entrepreneurs and markets do this. You want politicians command systems and regulation and
You listen to these guys, and they've done it. Both of them did an interview with Barry Weiss on her podcast, Honestly, and then one of them, I think Ezra, was on with Tyler Cowen, and you listen to them, and they sound like East German bureaucrats.
Yeah.
Well, we've got a plan. Everything's a plan. The government plans. It's like, no, the government is force. It's not the interior decorator like Soul says. It doesn't come in and arrange things. It's force.
Right. And those guys have never, when they talk like that, it's like you've never been on the other end of that side. You've never been one of the regulatees that's
Right.
had to have sleepless nights over somebody that's, some regulator that's doing an audit on you or whatever. It's like you've never been on that side of this equation.
I'm
You've
sure
never
you're
had
familiar.
to bear the cost of being wrong.
I'm sure you're familiar with McGovern, George McGovern, when he retired from the
Yeah.
Senate and started that B&B. I think you guys might have even written about it, but he says, wow, I wish I would have known when I was passing all these laws in the Congress, how burdensome they are to the small entrepreneur. It's like, yeah, no kidding.
There's two types of people in the world: people who sign the front of a paycheck and people who sign the back of a paycheck. And it's almost like you want to run for Congress. One of the things is you have had to have started a business, you've had to hire employees, you've had to fire employees, and you've had to sell your business for more than you at a profit.
Right.
If you've done those four things, then you're probably ready to come in and have some empathy for what it takes to create wealth. So few people today understand what it takes to really create wealth.
Yeah, maybe that's
hard.
maybe that's a better thing than term limits, Gale. Maybe we have a test like that before you can run for Congress. That'd be great.
Yeah. Filter a lot of these guys out. Bernie would never be there. It's like he's been this whiner complaining. I just look at him. It's like, Bernie, you are so filled with hatred and envy for people that are creators. It's like, man, it has to be tough being around you. It has to be tough being you.
Yeah. Because they're smarter than these guys, and they can't figure out why because I'm smarter than them, but they're wealthier than me. I don't understand that.
Yeah.
Well.
Jeez.
All right, gentlemen.
All right.
Gale, have
Always
a great
great.
weekend.
Man.
All right.
Yeah.
We'll do it
Think
again
about
for
Freedom
sure.
Fest, man. It'd be good to
All
see
right.
both
Yeah,
of you
it'd be
there.
great. It'd be great to share dinner.
All right.
Yeah,
All right.
absolutely. All right.
Bye now.
See you
Take care.
guys. Yeah.
Bye-bye.